Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Glendale Civil Service Commission meeting. Today is March 11, 2026, and may we have roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Hatamian,
Here.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Here.
Commissioner Reen,
Here.
Commissioner Naravian,
Here.
Chair McGrabian.
Here. Thank you. Next, please.
Flag salute.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Kwan, next, please.
Minutes, action, consideration for the minutes for the February 11th, 2026 meeting.
Can we have someone move to approve the meeting? The minutes?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hatamian,
I will abstain. I was not here.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
Abstain also.
Commissioner Naravian,
Yes.
Chair McGrabian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Oral communications. Madam Chair, at this time, I do not have any cards, nor do we have any calls on the line.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Recruitment and examination report.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, this is the regular recruitment and examination status report, which represents the current recruitments in process and that our team is working on. You'll notice that the team has 34 open recruitments, and the report identifies the division of work and the various stages of the examination and selection process. If the commission has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I see none, and so we will go to the next item, please, Mr. Kwan.
Eligible lists established.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the commission, the subject before you is the regular report that includes all of the eligible lists that were recently established since our last meeting in February. The report includes the total number of applications and the number of individuals that advanced through the various stages of our examination processes. Since our last meeting, we have had a total of 19 lists that were established. 4 were open to the public, 9 were given on a promotional basis, and 6 were given on an open and promotional basis. This is a note and file item. However, if the commission has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Do we have any questions or comments? No? Seeing none, we will go to the next item, please. Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Class specification and job bulletin for approval, Director of Community Development.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, before you for your consideration is approval of the updated class specification and job bulletin for the executive level position of Director of Community Development. The Director of Community Development is responsible for planning, directing, and managing the operations and programs of the Community Development Department. This includes oversight of administration, building and safety, neighborhood services, planning, economic development, and housing, which also encompasses homeless services. As you may know, the city's Director of Community Development resigned on February 26, 2026. The city manager intends to conduct an open recruitment process to fill this important executive level position. Prior to initiating the recruitment, the city manager asked staff to make minor updates to the class specification. The primary change reflects the addition of homeless services responsibilities, which were recently transferred from the Community Services and Parks Department to Community Development. In addition, the specification has been transitioned to the city's updated class specification format. The minimum education and experience requirements remain unchanged. Pursuant to Civil Service Rule 4, Section 3C, staff is also requesting the Commission's approval of the job bulletin for this recruitment. The job bulletin you see attached is serving as a placeholder document until the full recruitment brochure is prepared. We are bringing it forward now so that the Commission may authorize staff to post and begin the recruitment process once we have an executive recruiter in place. As I stated earlier, the city manager intends to have Human Resources conduct an open, competitive recruitment utilizing the services of an executive search firm, and once that firm is selected, the final brochure and the filing period will be established. The essential functions and minimum qualifications included in the placeholder bulletin and the final brochure will remain consistent with the proposed class specification. As part of the selection process, finalists will participate in a professional panel, community panel, or internal stakeholder panels, as outlined in the job bulletin. In accordance with the civil service rules, candidates must achieve a minimum score of 70% on each panel to be placed on the eligible list. So with that, staff does respectfully recommend that the Commission approve the proposed class specification for Director of Community Development as submitted, and approve the proposed job bulletin for Director of Community Development as submitted. We're happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. Let's first begin with the class specification. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
On the class specifications, I do have one question, and I'm not sure who I need to direct this towards, whether it's going to be to HR or representative, because the department representative would have been the director, right? So I would direct it to HR. On page 11, the addition which says plans and directs the development of homeless service plans and programs that comply with federal rules. And I don't know the answer to this. Are there any state regulations that would also need to be in compliance? Usually I see them paired together. It'll say federal and state. And so I don't know if that's something that needs to be researched to determine if there's also state regulations that apply. And then my final comment was just a period at the end of the sentence is missing.
No, there's something in the end.
Oh, I see. I missed that part then. Then we're okay with the period. But I'm just wondering if there's any state mandates or regulations that also need to be in compliance.
I don't know the answer to that. This program was moved from Community Services and Parks. We took the approved class specification language that department was using and moved it over to this department. Independently, I did not confirm that if there were state regulations or not that we should be concerned about, but I'll ask my staff to come to the podium and confirm if there is or is not.
And I guess if we're talking about state, maybe we can also ask about any county-wide regulations or, just local.
Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Manya Hunanian, Deputy Director of Human Resources. I, too, do not know the answer to that question, but I will confirm. And if there are any state regulations or local, we will go ahead and include that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. In looking at this class specification, I went to the online portal with documents and class specifications, and they were the same as best as I can tell. So either the one that we're looking at that has not yet been approved is posted, or that's what happened?
That is, yes, that is exactly what happened, because when we upload the document in order to prepare this agenda packet, then we have to upload it into our system. And that was the only way to do it. And we did it as late as possible so that it was not, because we didn't want it posted until it was actually approved by the commission.
I think I want to question that a little bit, because the public is looking and relying on class specifications if they haven't been approved yet. Even though it's a very minor thing, I understand the rationale, but is that a procedure that we want to follow? Or do we want to have class specifications that are approved then go up on the website so the public can see them.
Right, that's what we intend to do.
We
Once
do-
it's approved, then we should do the upload. So what you're seeing on our system should be what's in place today.
No.
That's not what you're saying?
What I'm seeing is that what we're asked to approve today is the same as what's been posted in the new format. So there's no, I didn't go through every comma, but I'm pretty sure it's identical. And I think that's what happened. And so I'm just raising that as an issue that I don't think that we should do it that way. Not a problem, but let's not make a habit of it.
It was, it was uploaded as late as possible, right when the agenda was posted, with the approval date of today's commission date. So if you look at the approval date, it does list today's approval date. So the members of the public will know that it was today that it was actually approved, if it is approved.
If it's not approved, then we've told the public that it would be approved.
So what you're suggesting, Commissioner Reen, is that going forward, don't do any uploading until after the meeting has taken place and the document has been officially approved.
I think so, because there may be changes at our meeting, or it may not be approved. And so I think as a member of the public, I'm looking for a job. Well, here's a classification, and we might change it, or who knows? And so I think it's just best practice to wait. And then if whatever we approve, if we approve it, then it goes up right then.
Yes, and absolutely, we will do that. This is an internal issue that we need to figure out how we can do that in order to be able to present the item to you at the same time, be cognizant of what is actually posted. So we will look into how we can address that.
Sure. Or we can add some kind of disclaimer on the posting. It says it hasn't been approved yet, but it's tentative or something.
Yes.
Right, approval pending, dated on whatever date.
Yes, and I just want to clarify, this is not the posting itself, this is only the class specification. The posting is not, the job bulletin is not posted.
I understand
Yes.
that. I think in terms of like, it's pending approval, though, that means you're removing the old one, and the old one is the one that is our official one until it's replaced.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure how all of it works. So I'm going to reiterate, I think best practice is whatever's been approved is online, available for the public to review and read and rely on. And then when we approve something different, then it goes up right then.
Yes, we will look into that and we will address it, absolutely.
If I can just ask a question in that regard. So is it that the class specs that are online, do they have the current changes that are pending before us, or is it the old class specs? Because class specs get revised all the time. So the old class specs, if it's the old class specs and they're online, then that's different, right? But I guess what Commissioner Reen is asking, or based on you looking at the class specs, is it the one that's before us with the changes?
So this one, it is because it was updated to the new format. But this is basically the old spec. It's just converted to the new format. The writing in red is what was added, which is the homeless services portion of it.
So the question is, I guess, then the red section, is that online?
Yes,
Okay, then I agree with Commissioner Reen.
yes.
Yeah.
So we've recently transferred to a new system, if you will. We'll figure out the nuances so that going forward, what is approved in place remains unchanged until a new approval has superseded it.
Thank you for that, Ms. Adams. Okay, any other questions or comments about the class spec? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I would move that we approve the class specifications as presented to us tonight.
Okay, do we have a second?
I would just say, based on the research that HR is going to do to determine whether or not state regulations apply, and I did just quickly while we were talking research, and I believe there are state regulations that will apply. So with those amendments.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we have Commissioner Rin withdraw your motion and have a new motion by Commissioner Hatamian with what you just said?
So if a motion is made, and I have to ask council, that's pending additional research by HR to make a determination, can a motion be made like that? Because we're not specifically, I'm not going to make the edits to the language in my motion. My motion is just simply going to say, we need to go back and look at this and make a determination if the word state needs to be added in there.
So it wouldn't, did the motion receive a second? So it would
Not
need
yet.
to receive a second for us to continue to have a discussion on the motion. But if it doesn't receive a second, then it would fail for lack of a second. If that's the case, then you might want to resolve the discrepancy prior to making a next motion.
So the discrepancy would require research on the part of HR to determine if terminology needs to be included.
Let's
And that
deal
was
with
my
the first
question.
motion first. Commissioner Rea?
Well, I'll withdraw my motion. I may remake it in just a moment, but for purposes of discussion, I think that I don't feel comfortable voting on something if I don't have the language. So we could approve what's before us tonight, and then staff could research this issue. And if they want to add something about, or maybe they should add, I don't know either, then we can approve it next meeting, just a little modification and upload it at that time. It seems like this recruitment's not going to happen. There's a placeholder concept here, so it's not happening like tomorrow, or maybe it is. I'm not sure.
It's not, we don't have the executive recruiter in place quite yet.
So I guess then it would depend on the best path to move forward. And I'd ask our council, can we approve something today that's before us as is, and then have there be additional edits made?
You can offer a motion with conditions, and if that gets approved, then yes. But if that doesn't sound like that's going to get approved, if there's additional language that's going to be added that's not presently there. Is there a technical question that you want to pose to?
So I'll make a motion and we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the language on the class specs as is, with the understanding that HR will be conducting research to determine if the word state regulations need to be added to the portion of the class specs on page 11. Do I have it?
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hatamian,
Yes.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
I would just say, I don't think it's a bad motion, except for I don't think it's the right way to do it. So I want to see language, and I want to approve it tonight and get it up keep it up on the website. So for that technical reason, I guess I'd vote no, even though I agree with the sentiment.
Commissioner Narabian,
I'm going to say no also.
Chair McGrabian,
Yes. Okay, next item, please.
compliance with administrative.
Just
go
to
to
say
the-
that as soon as we've made that determination, we'll let the commission know.
Right, and then we need to now have a motion for the job bulletin, correct?
Yes, and just for point of clarification, I'm sorry to go out of order if I am. So if we're going to update the class spec in the future, then there's going to be language. And so what if somebody disagrees with the language? Then what do we do?
It's just going to say and state. If the state applies, or it's going to say federal, and then the only language will be and state.
State and local possibly.
And local, if possibly, state and local.
Yeah, and I put it on the record that state will likely apply. It's just I'm not in the role of making that determination.
It'll either be and state, or it's going to say comma, state and local. Those are the only possible changes. Okay, and then do we need to, Ms. Varpetian, do we need to now move to approve the job bulletin?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any questions and comments from my fellow commissioners on the job bulletin? Hearing none?
A couple of comments.
Go ahead.
Number one, when it is posted, we'll need a probation period stated in it. Under the rules, that's missing. And also a statement that it's an open recruitment, that's also missing. And then just throwing out a question, if we don't have the filing period here tonight, then we can do that? Because the rules require that the filing period be stated, we have an open date, but no end date. Is that okay?
Well, if the commission would allow us to move forward with the executive search firm, we can report back at our next meeting on the filing period. The brochure should likely be prepared by then with the one-year probationary period identified. as well as everything else that should be identified on the colorful brochure, it being open and competitive, and everything else.
So why are we being asked to approve this tonight if we're not ready to go yet?
Because we meet once a month, and we want to get the firm in place this month, get the brochure together, have it promulgated potentially, so that we can move the process along rather than having to wait until the first meeting in April to get started. It's an executive level recruitment. Normally, the city manager may have choices to appoint someone as an interim. In this case, he does not. So he's managing that department himself as well as running the city. So we're just trying to expedite the process.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate that Commissioner Rin very carefully reads all of these documents and catches things that may have been inadvertently left out. Thank you, Commissioner Rin. Maybe we can propose, someone can propose a motion to approve the job bulletin as is, plus adding the probationary period to state that it's a promotional item and that as soon as the end date is available, it will be added.
Open recruitment.
Open, I'm sorry, open.
I would make that motion, that we approve this subject to the addition of the probation period. It's 1 year on this class, and also a statement that it's open. And we have the opening date, the closing date will be added when it's known. And subject to that, I would move that we approve it.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hatamian,
Yes.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
Yes.
Commissioner Naravian,
Yes.
Chair Magrabian.
Yes. Thank you. Next item, please.
Compliance with Administrative Policy 4-6, Employment of Relatives.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, this item is provided for the commission's information. The purpose of this report is to provide a yearly update on how the Human Resources Department ensures compliance with Administrative Policy 4-6, which governs the employment of relatives within the city of Glendale. We last reported to the commission in March of 2025. To support compliance with this policy, the HR department collects and maintains information regarding employees who have relatives working for the city. This information is initially gathered at the time of hire and is recorded in the city's HR and payroll systems. Newly hired employees also receive written notification of the city's nepotism policy during the onboarding process. In 2024, HR implemented an electronic reporting system to improve the collection and maintenance of this information. Through this system, employees are asked once each calendar year to review and update their disclosure information. Again, new employees complete the disclosure through a link as a part of their onboarding process, and annually we ask for updates. It's important to note that the reporting of relatives is based on the employee's self-disclosure. As such, HR relies on the information provided by employees during both the onboarding process and during the annual update cycle, and does not independently verify reporting relationships. During the recruitment process, candidates are asked whether they have a relative employed by the city. If a relationship is identified, HR reviews the information and notifies the department head. At the certification stage of the recruitment process, the department head makes a final determination, ensuring that any potential conflicts are addressed before a conditional job offer is extended. When a relationship is identified, a nepotism policy notification is issued to several individuals, including the relevant department head, the city manager when appropriate and depending upon the positions involved, the supervisor within the affected area, and the assigned HR analyst. This oversight process is designed to prevent any potential conflicts of interest and workplace concerns related to supervisory authority or organizational influence. Based upon the most recent data collected, there are 171 employees who have reported having a relative employed by the city. These relationships exist across several departments, with the largest numbers reported in the police department, community services and parks, Glendale Water and Power, Public Works, and community development. For purposes of Administrative Policy 4-6, the definition of relative is broad and includes spouses, parents, children, siblings, in-laws, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, step-parents, stepchildren, and other relatives living in the same household. Finally, the policy includes specific restrictions for certain executive-level positions, employees serving as city manager, assistant city manager, deputy city manager, or assistant to the city manager may not have relatives employed by the city. If an employee is promoted into one of these positions while a relative is currently employed by the city, the relative must vacate their position before the promotion can be finalized. This information, again, is being presented for informational purposes only, and this concludes my report. We have HR staff here if you have any questions, and if not, this will be a note and file item.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Do we have any questions from my fellow commissioners?
I have a question. Why is the police department so higher than everybody else? And it would be very helpful if this graph showed actually if they're the same, if they're in the same position also. Like to say, are the police officers all the relatives within the police department, or are they somewhere in the city elsewhere?
Your relatives in the police department can be both within police and other departments.
Okay.
We don't have a illustrative document tonight to show you where the relatives are, but I'll have to turn to HR staff and see what length of time it would take for us to produce that.
It would also be helpful, it would also be helpful if we knew if they're at the same level, or are the relatives above the people that they're associated with or relatives of? You know what I'm saying?
Right, well, there's,
Their level in the department and what have you.
yeah. You cannot supervise a relative, so we know that that's not what is in place now. But to illustrate where people are, we would have to bring that information back to you. But you're not allowed to supervise a relative.
When you say supervise, is that just one position above that person? Or can a relative be like one or two positions above that, like a captain or a lieutenant or a patrol officer?
It could be several levels difference, but not immediate supervisor.
Turn on your microphone.
But to illustrate to your point, Commissioner, we can bring back more data to show you where the persons are.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
May I piggyback on my fellow commissioners' comments, because I'm in total agreement with that. So I was wondering, how much work would it be for staff to expand this chart? And by the way, I'm completely confident that we don't have any problem with nepotism in our city. But there have been people that have come in and said that there is a problem. And so I don't like that atmosphere. So if we can provide a little bit of extra data, and then remind the public that nepotism doesn't mean that we just have friends or employees or family that are employees. It means that they are able to influence that employment. So there's a difference between having family members working somewhere in the city and nepotism. So I think with those two things, then we could make a very strong case to refute the suggestions that have been made. And I want to do that if we can, if it's not too much work. So I was thinking, you take this, you start with this data here, and the question that is going to be at the end of this spiel is, how much work would it be? So we have this chart, take a two-column document. One is, okay, we have, just starting at the top, city attorney. There's somebody linked in one of these numbers here to the city attorney. So you take that person in column A without the name, column B, like a number or some designation that's not a name, and then you put their job classification code next to each one and the department they're in each one. And with those job classification numbers, we know what their job position is. And then you can just look at a city graph or chart and know the line of command, the chain of reporting. And then we have something that this chart shows us that family members are employed by the city, but it doesn't tell us anything because it's not nepotism. Yeah, okay.
Chair McGrabian, this information, members of the commission, this information is public record. We've released the information with names, position titles to the public. And I just want to point out, if you see, for example, in the police department, if a set of brothers are police officers, then that's going to say that's 2 people under that department. So the numbers look a little bit bloated. You're not reporting on the pair. The 171 doesn't repair the family pairing, but it actually reports on the individuals. So one person is reported under the city attorney title, and the family member could be reported under the parks title. And so that's why it looks like there's 171 family members, but not family pairs that are working at the city. But the information is a public record. We could have that over to you tomorrow.
Okay, so yeah, so it's really there are 80 situations, 80 maybe if there's multiple, but more or less 80 relationships that we would like to scrutinize. And so if we did have those job codes, that would solve the problem. It gives us irrefutable evidence. Yes.
Out of 1,600 plus employees, 80 relationships is not excessive.
I just want evidence
But
to
we'll get the
refute
we'll get
the
that
suggestion
information
that
over
has
to
been
you.
made. And this chart only tells us that there are relationships. It doesn't refute the suggestion that there is nepotism. So, and I just have one other comment. I know I'm taking up too much time tonight, but that is that, and I raised this before, which is I think our nepotism policy is a little bit out of date because, for example, the State Personnel Board nepotism policy includes in personal relationship people that cohabitate in a romantic relationship. We're missing that. And that could entail quite a few more people, and we should know about that. So I would be happy to move to agendize that or leave it to other people, whatever you think. I'll head up that. I'll make proposals. I think it should be in the civil service rules and regulations, not in a city manual that has like 5 or 6 different topics. This is an important topic, and I think it deserves treatment in our regulations. So that's all I have to say.
I do share in Commissioner Rin's recommendation that romantic cohabitating partners should be deemed family, their family members, and we're in a part of life where a lot of people choose not to be married, not have a marriage license to become a spouse and fit into this definition of relative, but they have children together, they own homes together, they have a mortgage together, they are as spouses as you can be. So I do recommend that we also change our definition of relative to include that language.
So to the first point about gathering the data on the family relationships and reporting back out, I'm told by staff that we can easily have that available at our next commission meeting, that is not a challenge. So we'll have that ready. In terms of the administrative policy manual and updating the definition of family members, that will require a little bit more time because we have to meet and confer to change policy, but we can begin that process and report out on our progress with that. So we can do that. And to Ms. Varpetian's point, the 171 is not really reflective of how many familial relationships there are, so we can have that clarified easily by our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just have a couple of questions. So 1,600 plus employees, if I'm not mistaken, 171 that we were able to identify. Do we know, before we go down this rabbit hole, is that above or beyond the norm as to what other cities also have as far as percentage? Have we conducted a study to make that determination at all? Do we know if that's within the norm at all?
We have not did a survey of our labor market agencies, but in reporting back to the commission next month, we can do that
Yeah, I mean, if
in
if
terms
this-
of percentages.
Yeah, if the city is within the norm of other jurisdictions, then that's one thing. Kudos to the fire department. I could say paramilitary organizations, sometimes family members, children, see the parents, kind of go through the same footsteps. They'll join the scouts, they'll become Eagle Scouts, they'll join the military, they'll get out of the military, and this could be siblings. And then sometimes they're the best candidate. That's just how it works. But I do want to talk a little bit about direct influence versus indirect influence, because direct influence is clear, right? Because you're talking about the hiring authority was the decision maker upon hire. I mean, that's very blatant. Usually people will not put themselves in that position. Or the relative is a supervisor, right? They will not put themselves in that position. But then sometimes there's indirect influence. So I'm the director of finance. I am really high up the chain in the police department, and my kid applies somewhere. And I might not be the hiring manager. I'm not the hiring authority, but I have influence in the city. And so I know those are very hard to track, but then some of the stuff that was brought up to us were of that nature. Such and such child is working at such and such place, and this person is high up at the city level. And so those are the things that people will come to us with, right? Puts us in a situation, because it's not direct influence, but influence can be also indirect. So that's just something to keep in mind. And Ms. Adams, you talked about like an oversight process. It seems like this is a notification process to the departments, but not oversight. I would just, venture the use of the terms, because it says notification and oversight. But then it seems like when the department or HR gets notified that there may be some potential of conflict, then people are put on notice, including the department head, city manager, supervisor, the HR analysts. But then oversight is the next step, right? That's notification. Hey, here's our policy. We understand you're hired. There's maybe a relative coming into the city, and this is the policy, and we need you to adhere to the policy. Oversight is the next step, which is, okay, well, we got to make sure that there's no influence in the hiring process. So it seems like notifications go out, and yes, we try to hire the best, and you got department heads who get paid good money to understand what our policies are, and they need to adhere to the policy. So as an HR director, when you give them the policy, your expectation is that they're going to read the policy and they're going to adhere to it. And then so that the question becomes, who's going to make sure that they are following the policy and they're not influencing? But again, all of this that I say, it's we're in the business of people. And people make mistakes, people make bad decisions, people make good decisions. The question is, are we above, beyond the norm? And just from what I'm seeing with fire, which is also considered a paramilitary organization, and then you see Glendale PD, again, another paramilitary organization whose relatives, kids, siblings tend to go in the same line of career paths. It is a big difference between the two. I just don't know if that's within the norm. And if it is, that's one thing, but if it's not, that's another thing, right?
Right. We will compare up against our labor market cities, With the police department, I will submit to you that a couple of years ago, we did engage our workforce to help us find suitable candidates to fill all of the police officer vacancies we were suffering with at that time. We even had an incentive for referrals. And so I think that that program may speak to some of these numbers. In terms of influence, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I would also submit to you, mentors have influence. Other people who sponsors influence. So in workforces, we have relationships where people can influence how they pour into you to help you promote, elevate your career, whatever the case may be. That's not a bad thing. And everybody has opportunities within a workforce to strengthen relationships and even come to HR for support. We offer support for how to take civil service exams, how to interview properly, how to prepare oneself. And that support is available to all employees, whether they know one person or 10 people within the city. In situations where you may have an HR director, I don't have any relatives who work for the city, but if I did, and my daughter was working in the police department, I may know nothing about policing, but I know about working in municipal government. And by virtue of my daughter living in my family and listening to me at the dinner table, she's heard things over many years that could help her. That's a part of anybody's family relationship. So some of those things we won't be able to eliminate. Of course, families, we help each other. You know, we in the public sector and in the private sector. Mm-hmm. But in the case of the public sector, if my daughter is going into the police department, I'm not writing the police department's exam. So I have I don't have the capability to give my daughter anything that would have her score better because I'm not the one writing the exam for the police department. The police department and their leadership is doing that. So that's where I think the city has to lean on and trust their examiners, that we're not sharing information with family and friends on the examination. We take the examination process very seriously and protect and guard it so that there are fair outcomes for all, and that, you know, we're eliminating any nefarious activity. And in terms of family members self-reporting on family relationships, I have to take you at your word that you're telling me the truth. Mm-hmm. But if I find out that you have lied on a government form, then we will take appropriate corrective action for the lie.
And I agree. I think, again, we're in the business of humans, right? AI hasn't completely taken over our workforce yet. So you're going to run into that. Yes, families help families. I think the issue becomes when somebody else who's more qualified doesn't get the job over your family member. And so then the city suffers and then the taxpayers suffer, right? So I think that's where you get into the issues. And I think also at the same time, it's perception, right? The perception. So I don't think we would be having this conversation, or maybe we would be, if we didn't have speakers in the past come up to the commission and express their viewpoints. I can tell you what the organization now that I work for is 7,000 people. So just the organization itself. So I can tell you HR, they're administrative people. Administrative people love rules and regulations. We follow it to the T, we hand it out. Our expectation is, right? And I see a smile because you know that's the truth, right? And our expectation is our directors, because by the virtue of their position, are gonna adhere to those, policies. And that's where it goes from notification to oversight. And that's where when I was looking at the documentation, it said notification and oversight. Yes, the notifications go out that, hey, this is the policy, we need you to adhere to it. As my fellow commissioners mentioned, there may be some tweaks to the policy in the future. I do not agree that they become part of anything else except for the manual of policy and procedures. But the oversight component is, okay, sometimes we say when there's smoke, there's fire, right? When you have high-ranking folks, and they naturally will exude influence. And if a family member gets hired over somebody else that may be more qualified, right? I know when HR gets notified, they're going to take the appropriate actions. But the question is there a mechanism to view when a family member is hired to ensure that the hiring authority, number one, followed all the protocols. Number two, I know there's documentation that's completed upon the interview process. All candidates have to be asked the same questions. You know, the hiring authority has to have a panel. They need to fill in those questions. Is there a vetting process to ensure that, yes, this person that's being hired is actually the best pick for the city?
So during the examination process, all examination processes, HR is involved. We're in the interview room. We're heavily involved in selecting the rating panel. We come up with a rubric for the scoring. We tape record the interviews. I would submit to you in terms of examinations and getting on the list that we stand by our exams. The best qualified people make it to the top 3.
So that would be oversight. And I think that was the part that I was looking for in here. Because if you're in the room, you're creating the rubric, and you have the panel in there, and you see the panel interviewing 5 candidates, one which happens to be a relative. And HR acknowledges the fact that the best candidate gets selected because they're the neutral party there, regardless of influence, direct or indirect. That would be the component of the oversight. So thank you for that answer.
I think I also like the idea that if our city had a problem, we would be seeing litigation from people saying, I didn't get hired, I was more qualified. We don't have that. And I think the absence of litigation on that issue speaks as well. The only reason we're right now talking, as Commissioner Hatamian said, is we're not trying to eliminate a problem, we're trying to eliminate even the perception and optics of a potential problem, because we want to make sure our city has a clear reputation on this issue. And we would not have even been worried about this if we didn't have people to bring this to our attention. So I do want to reiterate that no one on this panel has seen a problem. We're now talking about optics, to nip this issue in the bud, to make sure that it doesn't give the appearance that we have a problem. And I think that's what's important to all of us. Go ahead.
I have a quick issue. I do agree litigation would be more prevalent if there was issues, but most people aren't able to bring litigation. I mean, who has the ability to do that?
But we're a litigious city.
I know, but most people looking for a job don't have the ability to go out and hire an attorney, and it won't be on contingency. It's going to be difficult.
It's not the only determinant factor. I'm just
I
adding
know.
that as
I'm just saying that factor is good, but maybe not indicative of what's going on. I also have one quick question. That referral program you referred to, was it only applicable to the police department?
Yes,
Only the police department?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to go to the next item? Okay, next item, please.
Charter Review Committee updates, proposed charter amendments impacting civil service.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the commission, this item is being presented to provide the commission with an update on recent actions taken by the Charter Review Committee related to proposed amendments to the city charter that affect civil service provisions. This item is provided for the commission's awareness and consideration. While no no formal action is required this evening, the commission may provide direction to HR staff if it would like its comments or perspectives conveyed to the City Council at the March 24, 2026 council meeting. Alternatively, members of the commission may choose to appear before the City Council directly at that meeting and share their views on the proposed charter amendments. The Charter Review Committee met 5 times to discuss civil service, and the 5 bargaining groups attended most of those meetings. During those meetings, the committee reached consensus and directed city staff to prepare updated charter language addressing certain provisions within Article 24 of the Charter, which governs civil service, as well as Article 9 relating to non-interference in administrative matters. I will briefly summarize the primary areas under consideration. First, it is the rule of 3. The committee directed staff to clarify how candidates are ranked and selected from eligible lists. The proposed language would allow appointments to be made from candidates within the 3 highest whole scores on an eligible list, rather than strictly by rank order. Under this approach, all candidates who fall within the top 3 scoring levels would be eligible for appointment, and individuals with the same score would be considered to occupy the same rank on the eligible list. All of the city's recognized bargaining groups have indicated agreement with this proposed change. Should the charter amendment move forward, HR staff will be required to bring back a civil service rule change and language for the commission's consideration and practical application. The second proposed amendment relates to the length of the probationary periods. The committee recommended expanding the Civil Service Commission's authority to establish probationary periods of up to 18 months while maintaining the current maximum of 12 months for sworn personnel. 4 of the city's 5 recognized bargaining groups expressed support for this proposed change. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, or IBEW, raised concerns that the proposed language could allow probationary periods to be extended without clearly defined criteria. Currently, the civil service rules allow probation to be extended when an employee is on an approved leave of absence. Should the charter amendment move forward, the civil service rules would need to be updated to provide additional guidance for the rare situations where an extension might be requested outside of those circumstances. The third proposed amendment addresses promotional reallocations. The committee directed city staff to draft language allowing promotional reallocations in cases where a vacancy does not exist, provided specific criteria are met and competition is not broadly suspended. Under the proposal, the chief examiner could authorize appointment of the incumbent to a reallocated position when the employee has developed specialized knowledge or experience that uniquely qualifies them for the higher level position. The intent is to recognize exceptional qualifications developed through service in the current role, rather than to suspend competition generally. The public safety bargaining groups have indicated that reallocations do not apply to their classifications, and they did not oppose the proposal. The Glendale Management Association and the Glendale City Employees Association support the concept and did not express any objections. However, the IBEW opposed the proposed amendment, expressing concern that it could weaken traditional merit-based hiring principles if the examination process is bypassed without clearly defined safeguards. Again, should the charter amendment move forward, the Civil Service rules would need to be updated, and the Civil Service Commission can clearly define any safeguards which are necessary. The Charter Review Committee also reached consensus regarding a non-interference provision in Article 9 of the Charter. This language clarifies that, except for the purpose of inquiry, the City Council and its members must deal with administrative matters through the city manager and may not direct or request the appointment or removal of employees except where specifically authorized by the charter. None of the city's recognized bargaining groups expressed concern regarding the proposed non-interference language. Finally, the Charter Review Committee considered several other civil service-related provisions, and after thorough discussion, reached consensus to recommend no change to the following areas: the duration of eligible lists, bumping rules during layoffs, the duration of layoff and reinstatement lists, the placement of department heads within civil service, and the City Council approval authority regarding the hiring and removal of department heads. None of the city's recognized bargaining groups raised concerns regarding those provisions, with the exception of the IBEW. IBEW has expressed support for transitioning department head positions to an at-will structure subject to the City Council approval to be implemented upon attrition of current civil service protected department heads. IBEW has also indicated agreement with the Glendale Police Officers Association that the police chief position should remain excluded from such changes in order to preserve professional independence in law enforcement. Notwithstanding the Charter Review Committee's recommendations to make no change to department head civil service status, the city manager has indicated a desire to continue exploring a recommendation to remove department heads from civil service and eliminate City Council approval authority regarding their hiring and removal. For that reason, staff is providing this information so that the Civil Service Commission has the opportunity to deliberate, provide a recommendation if the commission chooses to do so. At our last commission meeting, the commission asked HR to report back on the number of lawsuits that a department head has filed against the city, and the answer to that question is 0. There have been none. Staff also surveyed our labor market cities and found out that in addition to Glendale, Inglewood and Torrance have department heads that are civil service. Our other labor market cities, Anaheim, Garden Grove, Huntington Beach, Long Beach, Pasadena, Santa Ana, and Santa Monica, and Burbank have department heads that are at will. So, this information is going before our City Council at its March 24, 2026 meeting, and I apologize, in my report, there was a typo. It said March 3rd. It's not March 3rd. It's March 24th. HR staff is not returning to the Charter Review Committee as its discussions regarding civil service have now ended. This concludes my report. If the commission has any information to provide to HR or staff direction, we will take that. Alternatively, we are here to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Why don't we go one by one and see what we have to say? For the proposed amendments for the rule of three, do we have any comments or questions or recommendations?
I do, but I would be remiss, I think, if we didn't start this discussion by thanking HR staff and our city attorney staff for all the work they did at those committee meetings. They were long, tedious, but the amount of input and the quality of it was incredible. So thank you for that. Our city is really lucky to have you all here. Also, I think that the committee itself, I mean, some of the members of that were, all of them are outstanding members of our community, and they did a great job. And I do have one thing that's not on this agenda item that I want, if I could just bring that up and then get to my comments on the rule of three, if that's okay, Madam
I
Chairperson.
don't know if we're allowed to do that. Are we allowed to do that?
Well, it has to do with the charter and the review business. So whenever I read the charter, the first thing that strikes me as like really shocking and outrageous is this paragraph 5, section 2. And it says that the Civil Service Commission shall prescribe and enforce rules for the rejection of candidates or eligibles who fail to comply with the requirements of the commission in regard to age, sex, physical condition. And so particularly the gender thing sticks out at me, and I've mentioned this several times in various contexts. And so my question is, what job position in our city is gender a bona fide occupational qualification?
None to my knowledge.
Because we're not putting on productions of Othello and Desdemona has to be a lady, right?
I'm not sure it was a lady during the time that its production was.
So I guess my comment is that I would like to see that gone. I don't want to look at that. If we're going to go to all the trouble to amend our city charter, I don't want to see those things in there. I know that for like fire personnel and police, then there are physical requirements. I get it. But maybe we don't have to have those in there. We'll just let the law speak for itself and certainly remove gender. Okay, comment 1. On the rule of three. Just by way of preface, I think everybody knows it, but I'll just reiterate it, that the charter says that the commission will make rules regarding this subject and that they will appoint the top 3 candidates. So we can have an eligible list with 50 people, but when it's time to appoint somebody, only the top 3 people can go to the department for hiring. And if the department doesn't want those people or doesn't like those people, they're out of luck. Too bad. You don't fill that position. And I understand and I get it that there's been problems with that and that change is in order. So here's the fundamental procedural question. Do we want to put a new rule that, like the rule of three, may become obsolete or not work out as we hope? Do we want to embed that in the charter, which is kind of like a constitution? Or do we want to make it more like a statute and put it in the civil service rules? And then if it doesn't work out right, we can change it. We can tweak it. If there's an ambiguity, we can make a rule to clarify it. None of those are possibilities with the city charter because the city charter under state law is the equivalent of a statute. So we can't change it by rule. We can't modify it by rule. Maybe if there's an ambiguity, we could explain it, but maybe not. And so one of the issues that I had, like, okay, in the rule of three whole score, I said you could have an eligible list of 50 people. Depending on how their scores came out, you could certify 30 people that would be eligible to go to that department. Then the department is interviewing 30 people. Now, that's absurd. So we would want a rule, but as expressed in the current language, you couldn't modify that. You're stuck with all those 30 people going to have their interview, 87.1, 87.2, 87.3, and so on and so forth. So I find I'm not adverse to the rule. I think we should try it, and I think we should, but we should leave ourselves the opening to change it, to modify it, to try something else, to be more efficient. And so that's my spiel on the rule of three. I think it's like, okay, I discussed this with my wife. Oh, this rule of three, she says, that's the most incredibly boring, unintelligible thing you've ever said to me. It's like, so we're going to ask our voters of this city to weigh in, like, oh, what's better, the rule of three or the rule of three whole scores? And I think that underscores the fact that this matter is not appropriate for inclusion in the charter. This is something for the commission to do with staff's advice, with council's advice, and then it goes to the city council. And they have to decide if the rule that we want to do is okay. So there are plenty of guard rules included in that. And that was the pitch I made to the Charter Review Committee. I don't think there was any discussion, there was less discussion about this idea of rules or charter before the committee than I have just uttered tonight. As far as I can tell, I don't think it was just kind of like never came up. Like, hey, we could say in the charter that the Civil Service Commission will make rules that will provide that no more than five, that they'll make a rule about appointments and then leave it to us so we can have an efficient city. So that's my pitch. My question is, to staff, are there any downsides to just taking that rule of 3 whole square and putting it in a rule versus in the charter? Would it be all the same to you?
I mean, Ms. Varpetian can correct me if I'm wrong, but the charter recommendations that may ultimately be approved by the city council would go to the voters in one package, not separately. So it wouldn't be on the ballot a separate line item to vote on 3 whole scores. It would be all or nothing. And if it went as a package and it were approved, we strongly believe that we have to come back to the commission for a rule update that gets into the nuances of the practical application of it all. Because if a department has 50 people in the 3 top scores, maybe the rule is written in a way that addresses if there are 20 in score 1, we don't go to score 2 and 3. I don't know. We haven't really discussed what the practical application rule would look like, but there is an opportunity to have a rule that takes a deeper dive over what that may look like.
Can I just disagree, though? Because if I read the language that's being proposed, and it provides a very specific, and it has the language shall, so I disagree. But my question was, would it be all the same to you in terms of, like, our employment operations? Just setting aside what the charter says, if we gave you the rule of 3 whole score, as far as the operations of your department, it wouldn't be any different if it were mandated in the rules versus the charter. And in fact, you could change it. If you, in 5 years, Ms. Adams, you came to us and said, I'd like to tweak this. Can you do that for me? Well, if it's in the charter, the answer is no. If it's in a rule, the answer is yes.
So to that point, I would say my reliance is on the civil service rules. I rarely go back to the charter to see where it starts. I rely upon the rules in the civil service rules. So if there was a rule in the civil service rules that allowed for that, that would work for me, or that would work for our department.
I think that's great.
I think your question is, should the requirement of the rule of 3 be specifically stated in the charter? I believe that was something that that the charter committee considered, and I think that's something that our employee associations have also considered. And generally, their response was they had unless I'm misstating them, they had a greater deal of comfort making sure that the rules were specifically in the charter, because they would not feel comfortable with, for example, changing the rule of 3 or the rule of whole scores to the rule of the band or the rule of the list. And in order for them to have that sense of security that they participated in the process of identifying which rule the city of Glendale should be governed by, they wanted to make sure that it was housed in the charter so that it couldn't be easily changed. And it is a discussion we've had before. While it may be easier to I mean, this is the first time this rule is receiving a recommendation for change. 20-plus years ago, when a different charter committee was formed, they too looked at this specific issue, and that committee recommended leaving it as is. This committee is, after hearing from the various employee associations, has agreed to this specific recommendation. So it's not to say that your recommendation is a good one or a bad one. It's a different one, which you could propose to the city council, or we could take back to the city council as something that's coming from the Civil Service Commission. But it wasn't, the discussion was there. It wasn't that they overlooked that conversation.
I mean, I listened to the tapes, and I'm like going, when are they going to really get down and talk about all these pros and cons, these policy issues? What if this rule doesn't, we don't know this rule, how it's going to work out? How are we going to change it? Why would we have something so specific, so operational in our Constitution? I heard the word guardrails a few times. I sent a letter. They said thank you, and that was the extent of it. So I respectfully disagree with what they did. I think the better choice, and again, I respect and admire the committee. I think they're incredible people, and they did everything with utmost sincerity. But I think they got it wrong on that. I think it'd be better for our city, and so that's why I'm making this spiel. And I know I'm beating a really dead horse now. So that's it.
If I may, I believe the way that I look at Commissioner Wren's recommendation is it sounds in theory, but I can see it going awry in practice. I like the idea of if it doesn't work, we should change it. But I also believe that a city's success is in the longevity, security, continuity, and consistency of its practices. So if it's put into the commission's hands, commissions change every 4 years. People come and people go. So one commission says, oh, we don't like this rule, and we're just going to change it to this. And one commission says, we don't like that rule. And HR in the city, they don't, the expectations, it's so good to know what your expectation is. We're going to operate this way. Not everyone might like it. Maybe it's not the way that everyone likes. Maybe there's ways that some people can see would be better or more efficient, but this is what we as a city decided, and we're sticking to it, and then we operate within that. Knowing that a committee that we trust and respect looked at it and decided on it gives me comfort. But I do understand Commissioner Wren saying they didn't really go into depth with it, so how much did they consider? I do, however, believe that keeping it in the charter does give it that security, continuity, consistency, and everyone knows what to expect, and putting it into the hands of the commission to change more often, I don't like that so much.
I appreciate your comments, and that is the counterbalance. But here, it's not just the commission that changes. First of all, I don't know how often the rules are changed, but I think it's also about 10 years ago maybe. So they're not that easy to change, and all stakeholders have to come before. But it's not that easy. Then you have to go to council with your proposed amendments. Mm-hmm. So there's like a double layer guardrail that would protect us from just changing all the time these things. The other thing is, if you're running a business, right, we want a city that is nimble, that is efficient, that we hire the best people and we keep the best people. So can you imagine a private employer, a private company saying, oh, well, we're gonna make an employment rule about how we hire. And you know what? We're gonna keep that in place for 30 years no matter what, whether we like it or not, until we have an election and the voters decide this. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's the way we ought to go. This is very specific operational stuff. It doesn't need to be in the constitution of our city that guides us on what kind of city we're going to be, the broadest outlines. It's like saying, okay, let's amend the United States Constitution and let's put Title 18 in there so we have the entire rules of civil procedure, criminal procedure, crime. Let's put Title 18 in the Constitution. I think that's viscerally how it feels to me. So.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, go ahead, please.
Commissioner Wren, if I may, I do believe that I would recommend that you offer this to the city council, because if the Charter Review Committee, in your opinion, did not consider what you're saying deeply enough to satisfy you and what you would expect, then let's have the city council hear it and give it the consideration that you would hope that it would give.
Well, maybe we, is it permissible for us to make a recommendation? So my views could be up for a vote, and that would be our position with council, or
I think
is it
bef-
just an informational item?
So it's not we. So before we get there, just allow me to, just allow me to
Commissioner
see
Hatami.
if I can play some of your anxieties at ease. Miss Adams, how common is the rule of 3 and/or the rule of 5, which is the same concept except for 2 more people, in local governmental jurisdictions in their hiring process? How common is this rule?
The proposed one or the existing one?
The proposed one.
It's pretty common. Different larger jurisdictions have their rules designed to ban larger groups of people because they have more job openings across many departments, and they don't want to, or it's inefficient to continually run recruitments.
Thank you.
Within our city, we don't find that challenge as often, but it does appear.
Yeah. So what I don't want is for us to paint this picture that this is something brand new. It's horrible. We don't know how it's going to turn out. It's doomsday, gloomsday. There are other jurisdictions that apply the rule of 3, rule of 5, either one. And it's also very difficult to compare the private sector to the government sector in their hiring practices. The government sector has additional duties to ensure that there's a fair process, and you're giving the, let's say in this instance, 3 top candidates a chance to interview and be considered. My next question is, so we ensure the record is clear, when you have the top 3 candidates and the hiring authority does not make a selection, but there's additional people on the list, does the hiring authority have the ability to go down the list?
Not unless one of the top 3 withdraws. If not, no. They must select from the top 3.
Top 3 from the examination process, right? So the top 3 would have already gone through the examination process and would have been ranked at this point.
Yes.
But now with this new proposed, the top 3 could be 7 people or 20 people.
Could be.
I personally don't have a problem with the proposed language. That's why I recommended that Commissioner Rin speak to the city council directly, because I don't know if we are going to have a consensus on this issue within the commission itself. We can take a vote on it if anyone wants to make a motion.
I do have a couple of more questions.
Oh, okay.
So I know there's a meeting coming up with the city attorney's office on March 24th. What are
The city council.
city council? What parameters, if we know, is the council going to consider? Do we know? What are they looking for? Are they looking to make the hiring process for our directors a little bit easier? Are they looking to align more with local jurisdictions? Do we have an understanding of the parameters, the elements that they're looking for when they are going to amend and/or adopt or accept?
So the council,
revisions.
the city council established a charter committee and gave them direction to review a series of things. We provided an update. That committee's been meeting for a little, maybe exactly a year. We gave the city council an update last September. This will be the next time that we give them an update with certain of the recommendations that the charter committee has, that encompasses a number of things, including districts and so on. And this is one of them. So we would be providing the city council with an update of the committee's work and recommendations to date.
So am I understanding correctly that they didn't give specific directions to the Charter Review Committee, just said review and tell us what you think?
They provided directions as to a number of specific areas they wanted to receive information. This was one of them.
So areas, not goals.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. And then Ms. Adams, with this new proposed changes, if a hiring authority decides to pull 7 of the 10 eligible candidates off the list to interview, is it required that they interview these folks based on their score from highest to lowest, or can they just select anyone they want off the list in random order and conduct their interviews?
Well, in your example, are the 7 people in the top 3 whole scores?
Yes.
If the 7 people are in the top 3 whole scores, any of the 7 can get the conditional job offer after the final hiring interview.
And if, as a hiring authority, if I choose to pull 7 to interview, am I required to interview all of them?
Absent a rule that says otherwise, yes.
So if as a hiring authority, I get a list of 50, and I just want to have a big pool, and I pull 20, I'm required to interview all 20.
Absent a rule that says otherwise, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when this originally came to us last week, in theory, I support the rule of 3, and I understand that the HR department is also supportive of this rule change. I understand what Commissioner Wren is raising, especially, I'd hate for a future HR director or the city to have their hands tied by a specific rule that seems like it's really, really going in the weeds for the city charter. So I don't know if there's a way to provide your department with authority in the charter to select which rule that they want to abide by, or if we have to actually select a specific rule within the charter.
I don't know how to answer that.
The charter can be silent as to the specific process. So the rule of 3 is a civil service process for hiring. There's other rules, half a dozen of them. So what is being proposed by Commissioner Wren is to say that there will be a rule that regulates the hiring process, but not specific as to the rule of 3 or what is being now proposed as to the rule of the whole scores. And that's what's being, that was discussed at the Charter Committee. That idea was dismissed. The associations also did not care for it. And what the associations agreed to and what the Charter Committee agreed to was this broader rule that allows for potentially a few additional candidates so that the recruitment is a little bit more varied versus just the stringent 3 individuals each time. So that's the status quo.
Okay, I understand that, and I do understand that the Charter Review Committee did a lot of homework into this, and they invested a lot of time. So I do want to be respectful of their thought process. I don't, I'm with Commissioner Wren. I do think that a little more flexibility would have been better, but I respect that they looked into this and they decided to go in a different direction.
So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a broader rule, so therefore it provides more autonomy, right, to the hiring authority to get additional candidates that they want to interview.
Provided we have candidates, more than 3, who fall into the scores, then yes, we will have more choices. But you see our report out every month, and you see that in some of our examinations, we barely find 3 people to apply. Others, like apprenticeship programs, we have hundreds. So I think we can glean where we will have more choices and where, there's certain examinations where 20 candidates, for example, wouldn't even be applying anyway.
I'm looking, Ms. Adams, on page 6 on the eligible list established report, and we have one position. That is the power plant mechanic apprentice that had 552 applications. 552. After all the no-shows, withdrawals, everything, total number of, on the eligibility list is 28 people. So what you're talking about is I'm seeing right here on this piece of paper. So out of these 28, based on the new proposed recommendation, depending on the scores, you could have 20 people or 25 people on the list to interview.
You could, and in this example, I would submit that of the 28 people on the eligible list, when the Glendale Water and Power is ready to hire, that 28 won't show up for that interview. So having more would be beneficial to that department rather than fewer, using this example on page 6.
Can I make just one response to my esteemed colleague? I get it, respecting the committee, although it is just a recommendation to council, so it's really council's the decision maker on this, what goes before the voters. And I would add in that regard that the city manager is disagreeing with one of the recommendations made by the committee. So it's okay to disagree, and we're all going to work together, and then and hopefully, we'll argue, express our points of view, and then hopefully we'll get the best policy without showing too much deference in the interim. Just do what you think is the right thing, and then we'll see how it washes out with council.
I agree, and I don't think that it's just okay to disagree. I think it's necessary for people to get together and look at things from every point of view and openly express disagreement. I think that's what makes our city great. That's what makes our commission great, because no one's afraid of disagreeing with anyone and respectfully expressing that. So if we don't have any more comments or questions or recommendations, should we put this to a vote if we want to take a commission-wide recommendation on this rule, or what should we do that?
You can, yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion to make?
No, I didn't present this in that form.
Okay.
I presented it in the form. If you would like to give HR staff direction, we'll take whatever direction you give us.
We don't know what direction to give you, so we're sort of voting to see what direction to give you.
I think the discussion is to come to a consensus amongst themselves so that we have a clearer understanding when we draft the report to say the Civil Service Commission on a 3-2, 5-0 vote, whatever it is, was recommending that the rule, whatever the motion is, and then we would present that as part of our report to the council.
Okay.
Point of order, would it make sense, just throwing out idea, to go through the entire list of issues here, and then we could come back, because I think there may have been consensus about removing the gender thing, so we could,
With regard to the gender item, I think there's another part of the charter where we received direction to, I think very early in the charter, it says for purposes of the remainder of the charter, anytime we say he, we mean he and she. And that's the kind of thing I think that the charter committee had given us direction to clean up. And so as part of that cleanup, we will also address the issue about gender. We don't need a motion on that.
that's going to go to council. Whatever you're going to do is going to remove that language that we don't like.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion on the rule of three recommendation?
I don't know if it's a motion or more of like a suggestion at this time, because if the information is presented to council the way it's presented here, some of the questions that I asked, which were more along the lines of this being a little bit broader, gives more autonomy, the fact that depending on the pool, that a hiring authority may pool whatever number of applicants that they want to interview. However, they need to interview every candidate. I think a little bit more description in here would have answered my questions. And again, I don't know how this is going to be presented. It would be great if the reader knows those things without having to probe as to the underlying outcomes. Yeah, it's great the way it's written, but then in practicality, as it's applied, in my opinion, it seems like a more broader, gives more autonomy to the hiring authority, and they're able to exercise the full extent of the list, so long as it's equitable in that the candidates are going to get interviewed. And so it would be great if it's encompassed in here. And so I asked council, the information that was shared here today versus what's presented, is that a motion? Would that be considered as a motion to include verbiage that lets the reader know that once if it's adopted by the voters and it's applied, that's how it's going to play out?
At the time that we take the ballot language to the voters, they will have the actual language that they are voting on. So it'll be in the form of a red line.
How about council?
I believe the proposed language in the form of a red line will be presented to council, because I think on this particular item, they came to a consensus on, because we gave them a proposed language, in the form of a red line, which is not what you're seeing here.
Yeah.
But I think Commissioner Hatamian wants additional detail to the proposed language.
The question is, if council members, and I'm trying to make it easy for my fellow council members, those who are watching, if they're not watching and the information that was shared today, in application of this, if it is adopted and ratified by the voters, in application, it's a broader, gives more autonomy to the hiring authority, the fact that they'll be able to pull the list to its maximum extent that they feel the need for, but they would have to interview all the candidates, I think would be beneficial if it's encompassed in the actual text that's in front of me. And so I don't think that's a motion, more so than informative, right?
I'm not sure I'm following, but the report that goes to council will have language that was approved by the charter committee. It will also incorporate, potentially, if you have agreement on a recommendation, it will also include your thoughts, but not a substitute. We will not be substituting your proposed comments for that of the charter committee.
Of course.
Because they were tasked specifically with providing that recommendation from them.
Agreed.
I feel like adding it because this is what I do for a living professionally for decades, and I had to read this 3 times to understand what it means. So I can't imagine that the voters that will understand what this means without the clarifications that Commissioner Hatamian has mentioned.
So yeah, and I say this full kudos to the charter committee, HR staff,
Right.
council. I watched those meetings. They were an informational session. For those of you who do not work in the governmental sector or are interested in it, watch the charter committee meetings. You're going to learn a lot. And so, yeah, but it's not easy. You can put a rule in front of anyone, but then you say, well, what's it like when it's applied in application? What's it going to look like? And so I think maybe some of my fellow commissioners' comments may have been even in that regard. I'm not sure, but I think if we can, I can make a motion. My recommendation is to ensure the information that was shared during this session regarding the rule of 3 is encompassed in the language of this text moving forward in application. What will it look like in application? Which is the hiring authority will have the ability to pull from the list the maximum number of applicants. However, would have to afford those applicants the opportunity to interview, which is what was presented today.
Do we have a second? Can I second? Am I allowed to second?
You can pass the gavel in second, yes.
Can I pass the gavel to you, sir? Oh. Okay, I'll second that motion.
I don't understand the motion, to be honest, so I'm not,
Do you want to explain it?
Let's try that again. Okay, so the motion is the discussions that were encompassed during this session regarding the rule of 3. In its application, it will allow the hiring authority to pull the maximum number of applicants as they deem to be appropriate for the hiring process. However, all the applicants will be given the opportunity to be interviewed. And that's not encompassed in this text, so I would like it to be encompassed in the language of this text when it's presented to council.
May I comment? Well, I think, okay. My understanding is that if we're going to do something tonight, we're going to either say, we agree with some or all of these proposals made by the committee, or we disagree, or we take no position. And there may not be a consensus among us. So, I mean, so we can all go to the council ourselves individually and express our opinions. But to me, and I know there's a motion pending, and so this is probably completely out of order under Robert's rules, but I would just say maybe we don't take any action tonight, and staff will, if they'd kindly say that there was a discussion and the following points of view were expressed. You can paraphrase what I said, what other people have said, and give it to council as part of the report.
So there's a motion.
I
and the mo-
seconded it.
And then the motion has been seconded.
Okay.
So
We understand the motion to say that in the report that we produce to council, there will be a greater level of detail to explain the rule of the whole scores.
In the charter when it's
No,
adopted.
in the report that goes to council.
With the recommendation that it will be adopted into the charter.
I mean, I'm assuming council will educate themselves as to this. I mean, hopefully they'll get input from stakeholders and staff.
I think the motion is to accept the recommendation of the charter committee, but add some clarifying language as to practical
application.
But that's only related to the rule of three, right? 'Cause
That's
there
it,
are
just
four
that.
different
No,
recommendations.
no, we
Oh.
haven't gone to
Now
there
we got
yet.
into the other ones.
Just the
What-
rule of three.
Should we do an up or down vote on the whole package instead of going one by one? Because it just seems like this could be really confusing, like for a report that we provide to the city council, like where we say, on this one, it's a yes, on this one, it's a no, you know.
The up and down, I mean, we can't agree on one of them. I don't know how we can agree on all
Yeah.
of them. So I would like to go one by one.
Yeah, I recommend one by one.
Since I'm talking the most, I'll just reveal that I don't really have any problem with any of the other proposals too much because I think their character of them is different than this particular one. This one stands out as something that shouldn't be in the charter. It should be in a rule. So maybe the rest of this evening will proceed a course,
little bit easier.
hopefully.
So we can, so just to make it easier, you can include that as part of the motion as well. Now, what the council adopts, that's up to them. If your recommendation is that this should be a rule and not part of the charter, wonderful. My recommendation is that it's okay if it's in the charter so long as we can explain it to the council what it's going to look like in its application, because it's one thing to look at a rule, it's another thing to understand how it's going to apply. And yes, for face value, you would think that everybody's going to do their due diligence, and I don't doubt that they will. But at the same time, when I read it, and I'm familiar with some of these rules, what's in text didn't convey that.
Why don't we do this? Since this is not an official motion, we can tell the city council, two or more, that's why I wanted to take this to a vote, would like to take the recommendation of the charter committee, but add some clarifying language. Two or more would like to take it out of the charter and put it into the civil service rules. And that way, the city council will see that what the thoughts are here on this item, and they can choose to do whatever they want with it.
Agreed.
Okay, so forget all
Or
the
it can
rules.
even come uniformed from the commission, that these are the recommendations coming from the commission, unless somebody's really opposed to one or the other. At the end of the day, it's not the Civil Service Commission that's going to be the ultimate decision maker. So it's almost like recommendations that are being provided, right?
Why don't we do this? We know how the four of us, which way we lean, but Commissioner Naravin, I don't know which way you lean on. Do you want to accept the recommendation and add some clarifying language, or do you think it's better to take it out of the charter altogether and put it into the civil service rules?
I would be okay with adding the additional language. I just want to know what specific language is to be added.
That's what Commissioner Hatamian mentioned, that it that there's more, that the whole rule allows for more people to be put on the list. But if you expand the list, you have to interview all of them. You can't just say, I'll take number 7.
So that's the only language we're adding.
That's it.
Okay, that's fine.
You're
I'm
okay
okay
with
with it.
Just so we're clear, we're not adding that language into the charter. We're providing that in the form of a report to the city council for them to consider, but not in the form of a red line amendment to what currently the charter says, the commission shall adopt rules that'll effectuate the rule of 3. It will instead say, based on the charter committee's recommendations, the rules shall provide for the rule of the whole score. There's a little more extra into it. It's not just as I just said, but that's the extent of it. There's the section says the Civil Service Commission shall adopt rules about 10 different areas of where you're going to be controlling. One of which is the rule of 3, which will instead, if it's adopted, be the rule of the whole score. When we take the report to council, we're going to say that that's what the Charter Committee recommended. The Civil Service Commission, on a vote of maybe 3-2 or more, proposed that there be some additional language that explains how that rule will be effectuated. But it's not something that would go into the charter itself, because that's a very specific description, and it's sort of like in a statute, you don't say everybody will be interviewed. That won't go into the code language.
I do have one question. So, and it goes back to the question that I posed to HR. In looking at local surrounding jurisdictions, when it comes to the rule of 3, we said that yes, local jurisdictions do employ this process. The second question I guess I should have asked is it within the civil service rules that it's encompassed, or is it within their charters? Do we know?
The additional clarifying practices.
Not
that you
the
wanted to
additional
add?
clarifying practices. I think what Commissioner Reen was saying, which is let's keep it in the civil service rules versus the charter.
Some charters point back to the rules, so some charters are very vague, and it points to the rules for specificity. In the case of, I'm just going to use one example, the city of Los Angeles is in the charter. 3 whole scores is in its charter. So there's a variety.
I do then, in that case, like the idea of putting the language vaguely in the charter, and then to for lack of a better word, to satisfy Commissioner Janyan and Rin's recommendations, then the commission would add the clarifying language and rules for application. Is that then what the plan is for the recommendation by the Charter Committee?
The Charter Committee is recommending that the current language of the rule of 3 be amended to say rule of the 3 whole scores.
And then the application will be decided by the commission.
Correct.
Okay, so I think then that satisfies what my fellow commissioners were asking for, to design the rules ourselves.
I would say no, because if you look at the definition provided, it defines it with great specificity. It says, for purpose of the section, a quote, whole score, end quote, shall mean a total examination, I think there's a typo, a total examination score after the application of any veteran's preference, and all persons receiving the same whole score shall be deemed to occupy the same rank upon the eligible list. That doesn't leave room to say, well, it's not going to be 30, it's going to be 20, or it's going to be 5. That's highly specific, and when you use words in a statute, because this will be a statute under California law, the word shall, us lawyers know that means something. All means something. And so you try to make a rule that says, well, shall means maybe, and all means less than all, then it's not going to fly.
But we're saying that in application, though, the hiring authority will be able to exhaust the list if that's of concern.
Not if the word shall is in here and the word all is here, then you have to follow the language.
Wouldn't I don't know if that's at the commission's purview. I would think the city attorney's office is then gonna be providing that insight in regards to the legality of the language and its application. Ms. Perpetian?
If that's adopted by the voters, the new rule would be the rule of the 3 whole scores. Now, in its application as to what the whole score means, I think that's what you would come back. What is the passing score? I think that is something that would be determined. Am I wrong on that?
No,
And so
Who would be
the-
determining those details then?
Civil Service Commission.
Okay, then
And so that's why I think the description that I provided, which is this is how it's going to look in its application. And, and if that's the consensus with the city attorney's office and HR, that this is how it's going to be in its application because other cities apply it similarly and have similar language, should satisfy my fellow commissioner.
Well, there's a rule of statutory construction, and if a statute is clear, then you don't get to change it. And this is clear to me. How this works is clear.
Are
And
you reading
so-
the proposed language on
I'm
page 22?
rereading the proof that was, the language proposed, that's what I just read.
22?
But I don't know if our rule.
The committee,
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, go for it. I was just going to say, I don't know if our role is to interpret something that city council would be doing for us. I feel like when we look at the language that's going to go in front of the voters in the charter, the way the language is crafted, I'm guessing in its application, we've compared it to the one from LA City. And we've said, okay, well, that's the way they've used the language, and in application, this is what it looks like. And so I don't know if it's per se my role to sit there and say, let's go through the language and fine tune it to ensure in application. What we can do is probe it. So like I'm probing and saying, have we looked at the language? Have we compared it to other jurisdictions? And if we have, how does it look for them in application? Okay, it looks like this. Okay, let's put that in here. So council understands and it documents what's being represented to the commission. If in the future we have issues with being able to, interpret this rule, if that makes sense.
Okay. It took the committee like 4 or 5 nights to go through all of this, and so we're just kind of hitting it tonight. It seems to me, I just say that I don't think we're going to reach a consensus tonight, so I guess if people don't agree with me, then I would say my motion is that we don't make a recommendation, that we have differing views we're not entirely clear on exactly how we feel about it, and individual members can take it to the council if they feel like it.
No, I would want you to have that sense of comfort regardless of how long it's going to take, because I think, I think we're here for that. But I think also it would be, because the meeting is coming up, right, with the council, again, we can show up in person, but at the same time, would it be appropriate for us to make a motion for the city attorney's office to look into the language, make a comparable, and then say, yes, in application, the Civil Service Commission is going to have this level of interpretation when it comes to the rule, and in application, this is what it's going to look like.
I think there's too much water under the bridge. This has progressed to the point where it's just about to go to council. Everybody's worked hard on it. And I don't think that we're basically saying change it, I think. I think it's up or down. You either like the proposals that the committee made or you don't like them.
I think Commissioner Rin saying that the statute or the recommended language, which is a statute, is so clear that there will be no room for interpretation. And Commissioner Hatamian is saying that he believes that there is room for interpretation.
I'm saying based on the representation that's been made at this hearing, there's room for interpretation, and hence this text that's in front of us has to articulate that.
I think maybe just in the interest of moving forward from this specific item, I think the way that we could draft the report is have it reflect the various viewpoints that have been raised, and perhaps to also bring some additional clarification onto the application of the rule of the 3 whole scores.
I do share Commissioner Rin's concern that staff here is saying there's a possibility of, you know, the application is up to interpretation and it can be done a certain way. But I do share Commissioner Rin's concern that the language is so specific and clear that it may not allow for interpretation because then it's a statute. So I would like the city council to take all of that into consideration.
We'll certainly make that point a little bit clearer during their consideration.
Because we don't want the statute to be so stringent that there will be no room for application. And now we all said, sure, sounds good, let's take this up and agree to the recommendation, or at least us three. And then have this go into the voters and then later on realize it was so strict that there was no room for application and now we're stuck with it. And Commissioner Rin was right all along.
So for purposes of the report to council, we will make sure that it reflects that the commission had a discussion about removing the A rule out of the charter altogether and allowing the civil service rules to address which hiring process to pursue, number one. It will also state in the alternative, if council wishes to adopt the charter committee's recommendations, then to provide some additional clarification on the flexibility of the application. And we will provide some additional details as to how that works.
Okay. Is that okay with everyone?
I would put, yeah, that's great, and I ditto that, but I think maybe the other way around, because if the rule in its application in this city charter still allows leverage for the commission, Civil Service Commission, to make interpretations, then we're okay. If not, then yes, removal would be more appropriate. So just reverse the order.
Right, and then if the interpretation, if the language of the proposed statute that's going to be approved by the voters is so stringent that it leaves no room for interpretation and application by the commission, then the commission would want it removed into the civil service rules. Is that okay with everyone?
So I think basically what our attorney has suggested is she's going to basically summarize all this discussion tonight, so I don't think we need a motion. We'll just.
No, it's not a
rely on it.
motion. We're
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
saying
I'm
if that's
I'm
okay.
I'm okay with that. I think that's the best result we can hope
Yeah.
for this evening.
Right.
But there was a motion and a second, so I think you want to withdraw that motion at
I
this
will
point?
withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Okay, good. So this way, the city council will understand what all of our concerns are. And even though we disagree just a little bit, I think ultimately we agree on the presentation that we just proposed. Okay, let's go to the next item, which is the length of the probationary period. Any questions, comments, recommendations, concerns?
I just have a quick question. Is this not applicable to sworn, and if so, why?
The sworn bargaining groups represented that in their structure, if a trainee has not progressed to the level of what is deemed to be successful by 11 months, 10 months, that there's no additional length of time that would satisfy them, that the person would meet their expectations. So in public safety, extending beyond 12 months was not something that they were in favor with, and HR did not disagree with public safety.
Ms. Adams, my experience with law enforcement agencies by representing them in litigation has been that when a sworn officer who's on probation is injured on duty, and that is like an everyday event, that happens all the time, and they are no longer released to full duty, they're on light duty, or they're completely on medical leave, and that takes 2-3 months, then the probation period is paused during that time and continues.
It works the same way in our city.
Okay,
If they're on a workers' comp leave or other protective leave, there is a mechanism to extend.
pauses it, but
Yes,
then total is 12 months.
that's correct.
Got it, okay. Is the rest of the outside of sworn, as I understand it, most positions have a 6-month probation period.
No. Management positions have 12 months, Non-managers are 6 months.
So we're moving both managers and non-managers to possibly 18 months?
What we're saying is the 6 and 12 months will remain as is. In the case of non-managers, there is a mechanism to extend their probation to 12 months. That's already within our rules.
So what does
For
this mean?
managers, there's no mechanism to extend beyond 12 months. And every so often, with a manager, the belief is they may need additional time to prove their readiness. And in those cases, might we be able to extend to 18 months?
So this was just with respect to managers?
It could apply to non-managers, but that was not our thought process. Our thought process was with the managers.
I'm just not comfortable making a 6-month probation, possibly 18 months, to see if someone could, be a good fit for the position. So I don't like the idea of taking the 6-month probation period and extending it all the way to possibly 18 months.
Understood. So the mechanism now is that we can go up to 12 months for a probationary employee, civilian probationary employee, who starts off at 60 months. But for managers, we don't have the capability to go beyond.
I would agree to this if it's limited to managers then. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I do have a quick question on this. So, in theory, I don't have any objections to this, but just the way it would go into effect in practice is, I'm a little concerned that it might open up the city to liability unless I'm missing something. So if there's two individuals who get essentially the same job, and one person after 11 months is let go after the probationary period, another person gets like an additional 6 months to prove that they're up to the job. How do you decide, who's gonna, in like a fair and transparent way, like who will get that extension of the additional 6 months? Because I understand this is on a individual by individual basis, not for like a position. So you wouldn't say like, hey, for this certain position, we know it's a little more complicated, so we might extend it, but it would be more like the individual would have to prove themselves. Is that right?
So the person who's evaluating that person's performance would have to be convinced that with 1 more month or 2 more months of training, that the person could meet standards and be successful in the role. Where we have found this to be most applicable is in our dispatch center, where it takes a bit more time for some people to fully grasp how to be a good dispatcher. And at the 11th month marker, we've invested so much in that employee. Right now, we only have one choice: gamble or terminate you on probation. But there are instances where the head leader in the dispatch center will say, if we could give them 3 more months, we believe that they could grasp it. That doesn't apply to all of these other job titles. That's where we see it applied most often in the investment of professional dispatchers.
Do we have a possibility of then, if we're broadly adopting this, but it's only applicable to managers or applicable to dispatch, do we then, piggybacking on Commissioner Jehanian's concerns, open up to liability saying, well, you didn't make that clear in your charter change, and here I am, a secretary somewhere, and I think that I would need another month, and you didn't give it to me, but you gave that other dispatcher over there, and I think insert protected activity here, it's because you did it to me. You didn't prolong mine because I am insert protected activity, protected category here. So how, unless it's specified to which titles, not people, which titles this applies to, I could see it going awry.
But the recommendation here, Chair McGrabian, is to give the Civil Service Commission authority to craft a rule around how it will be applied. That's what specifically the Charter Review Committee said. To
So
give
we can then
the
say this only
commission
applies to dispatchers and managers.
whatever the commission determines how the rule should read.
Okay.
So I'll just make a brief comment. So conditional offer letter is probably going to cover a lot of that stuff. You just have to be clear in the conditional offer letter, but council knows and HR knows as to what the probationary period is going to be. And so the employment agreement and relationship is established from the beginning. I do agree that certain jobs have a very long learning curve. And it's not just, it's dispatchers, but it's also management positions too, a lot of them, because by the time you get around to understanding all the ins and outs of the government sector and what's required of you, that's your time period where you're just supposed to be going through training, mentorship, being paired with other people, going out with your team, connecting with your team, seeing what changes you want to make, getting analytics to see how you can better serve your clients and so on. So it does take a little bit longer. So I don't have an issue with this rule.
I also don't have an issue with the rule with the explanations provided. Anyone else? Okay, Commissioner Rin?
No comment.
Okay, Commissioner Jehanian?
Nope.
Okay. So 4 out of the 5 commissions have no problem with this, and 1 commissioner has no comment. Next item is the promotional reallocation. I did have a problem with this one, but I will have my fellow commissioners express their thoughts, concerns, recommendations, opinions before I do. And questions.
I think it just goes back to application again in the text proposed language. I think we've talked about this type of fact scenario before in front of this commission just to ensure it's equitable, right? It says that, on the first line, it says they'll be provided with specific criteria. And so I would just like to hear HR kind of elaborate a little bit just to ensure that it will be equitable, that it won't be just like I'm going to be focusing in on one employee and grooming them for the next level up and everybody else is kind of left in the dust type of thing. So how would this look in application?
So similar to how we report out to the commission on extensions for acting pay, we would more likely propose to report out on any promotional reallocation and have to address fairness and outcomes and equity in application, in addition to having a rule that addresses this. In its application today, if I elevate my skill set to the point where my department head seeks to reallocate my position to something new, my department head can do that. I am the one who's elevated my skill set, not others. So the reallocation is really intended for me. But we promulgate a promotional opportunity to all. So then people are competing for an opportunity that just does not exist for them. And that's the issue we're seeking to address. Does it happen every day? No, it does not. Could it be one time a year? Yes, it does. And in those cases, we would support a rule that the commission approves of that says, when this happens, we present the information to you in advance to suspend the examination in that one example, having laid out all of the facts. If the commission approves it, yes. And if it doesn't, then we just go with our standard examination process where people can compete.
I have no questions. Thank you.
I just think it goes against the entire purpose of having open examinations or opening it up. Because if someone really likes that person, then they'll just elevate it. But what if every department has a person like that, and now it's more of an internal progression versus an open examination? I could see it going awry, despite whatever protections the Civil Service Committee or HR will try to to give it. I think allowing this, I do share in the concerns of, I think it was IBEW. I do think that it goes against the whole purpose of having the type of the civil service and meritorious examinations. I can see it happening in a private sector, great, but that's not how our city works. That's not how government employment works.
The practical application exists today, to be honest. And for whatever the reasons are in certain people's employment history, their skill sets have elevated. And then there's a competition, and people are competing for a vacancy that does not exist. And those people competing complain to the HR director. I look at the exam. The person whose skills have elevated, they came out number one. But to those who competed, there could be a perception of having wasted their time. And so in those rare instances, we're saying we like to suspend the examination, but not without some commission, Civil Service Commission review of the reason to suspend in these unique circumstances. It wouldn't be a suspension of examination in its entirety. It would truly have to be unique, and there is no true vacancy.
Okay, why don't we just hear from each of us and see who has a concern or problem? Commissioner Ravian? Commissioner Tamian? You're okay with it, or? Okay. Commissioner Rin?
I see and understand your point, but I don't want to be contentious, and I mean,
I want you to say whatever you want to say. You're not contentious. Just say whatever you say.
I guess I'm okay with it. I understand your point, and I think it's very valid, but I think under the circumstances where you have to go to the commission and get it okayed, I think that's a sufficient guardrail, so I'm okay with it.
Commissioner Jehanian?
Yep, no, I agree. I think that it sounds like it would be a very rare situation, and the commission would have oversight over it, so I'm comfortable with it.
I'm also comfortable with my fellow commissioners' thoughts, and after Ms. Adams explained how it would be applied, I'm okay with it. Okay. Next item is the non-interference provision of Article 9. I should put my glasses on. Any thoughts? Any comments?
I guess I'm just curious, because this is going to go in front of the council to approve, and it seems like it's taking authority away from the council. So, Ms. Farpetian, is this gonna be proposed as is, the way it's written to the council?
May I briefly address the commission?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Good
please.
evening. Welcome.
Must have asked an important question.
It was, I was involved in the drafting of this, so I thought I'd just answer. It's fair for me to answer the question.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mike Garcia, City Attorney. So this provision is very typical amongst charter cities, either in their charters or municipal code, and it is really to create that clear delineation of the role of the city council versus the role of the city manager. The council sets policy, the city manager implements that policy and hires and retains the employees and is responsible for the overall organization. And so that I don't view it as taking away the authority. It's really delineating the process already there in our charter as what the duties of the city manager are and what the duties of the council are, and it's just making it very clear which role is which. And so I would answer the question that way.
Thank you. So it would be the city attorney's recommendation to the council to pass this on to the voters.
And the city manager as well. City manager and city attorney concur.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, in practice, so I'm a council member, I have constituents in certain areas, they'll come up to me, they'll address concerns. Hey, my waste management guy didn't pick up yada, yada. Different things that come up to council, right?
Yeah.
Are they allowed to contact the directors, or do they have to go through the city manager?
No, in practice, they're going to be contacting the directors, and that the intent here is not to eliminate that, but the intent is to limit the ability of council members to provide direction, to actually direct a department head or employee to take some specific action without the approval of the city manager.
It essentially establishes a chain of command.
That's correct.
And the buck stops with the city manager, so if anything happens, then the city manager, the city council then could discuss the issue with the department head and the city manager, but it's the city manager who gives the direction as to personnel matters.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, thank you. I do see this as a typical way of functioning within charter cities, and of all the things recommended, I just wrote yes and moved on to this one. I didn't even give it another thought because I'm used to this and it just makes sense. And it does protect the city, it protects the city council actually. And I think the city council would like to sometimes give up a little bit of power to protect itself as a body as well as the city.
Thank you. So I understand it further. So the city manager, when they attend council meetings, if there's a vote, whether it's unanimous or by majority, to carry out a certain function, right? Obviously, at that point, that directive is coming from the council. What we're trying to avoid is individualized direction to directors.
Correct, and
Gotcha.
or interfering with the city manager's authority, how it's implemented.
Could you see how, what kind of chaos it would be for a city council member to receive a call from a constituent and then call a manager at some department and say, do this, and the city manager knows nothing about it because they're directing a manager. But this just allows the city manager to have control of the personnel because city manager handles personnel and city council handles policies.
And then is there any documentation or verbiage anywhere, just wondering, for the city manager to ensure that when there is a unanimous vote or majority vote with the council on a certain thing, in order for the city manager, I'm guessing it's just already encumbered somewhere, it's part of the record, that the city manager is going to direct staff to carry that out?
It's part of
the
his or her
process.
duties to implement under the charter and the contract that the city manager has with the city.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you,
Anything
Mr.
else, anyone? Okay, is everyone okay with this recommendation? Okay, seems like we have a consensus. Okay, next one is provisions reviewed with no recommended changes. Does anyone have anything to say about this one? Especially because our city manager does wish to change the no recommendation by the Charter Committee review on the placement of department heads within civil service item. Commissioner Red?
I accept the non-action on those items.
Commissioner Naravian?
I'm okay with that also.
Commissioner Tamian?
No questions.
Commissioner Jahanian? Okay, I am as well. I do want to add that in the 2 decades I've represented cities in employment matters, the only time I've seen a department head sue a city has been for an at-will employment city. And that's why I wanted to know whether our city has had history of litigation with department heads. I was very curious about that. And I do want our city charter committee and the city council to do whatever they believe is best. I don't want to give them my opinions, but I think that my experience and the statistics of the city, I would like the city council to take that into consideration. That at-will employment for department heads invites department heads to make decisions to try to keep their job instead of to do their job, because they might be worried that they might be terminated if they disagree with the city manager or don't do something that the city manager wants. And then also with increased litigation, then the city manager will be spending time instead of running the city, will be spending time working with people like me to prepare for depositions and trial and documentation. And so while I do really like the idea of the city manager having that open autonomy and that extra empowerment, in practicality, what we have in the city has worked for a long time. And if the Charter Review Committee has also reviewed this item and decides to recommend it, and if all of my fellow commissioners also agree, then that's something that's important as well. So I'm just going to stick with everyone else and just say that I agree with the Charter Committee review, although I do respect the city manager's request and I understand it.
Okay.
Okay, next item. That's it, right?
That's it for
That's
this
it for
item.
this item, okay. Mr. Kwan, we are ready to go to the next item.
Reports and information, employee job performance evaluations, past due aging report, and acting assignment extensions report.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, before you are two informational reports. The first on performance evaluation and the return status of City of Glendale employees. As you can see, the response rate remains very good, and there are no evaluations on the second notice list. The second informational report is the temporary assignment extensions report covering the period of February through March 2026. This report is provided to the commission on a regular basis to keep the commission informed of temporary assignments that have been extended by the Human Resources Office. Included in this report is an extension related to Mr. Alejandro Guerrero, who is currently serving as the acting integrated waste superintendent within the Public Works Department. Mr. Guerrero was selected to serve in this acting capacity due to the current integrated waste superintendent being out on leave. He was chosen for the assignment because he is familiar with the operations and his knowledge of the section, which allowed the department to maintain continuity in leadership during the absence. Also, there are no other supervisors at Mr. Guerrero's level, so there is no rotation that we could put into place. The Public Works Department requested an additional extension of this temporary assignment as the current integrated waste superintendent remains on leave. Consistent with the provisions of the Glendale Management Association Memorandum of Understanding, Mr. Guerrero receives a 5% salary increase while serving in this temporary assignment. This item is presented for the commission's information. There is no action required. However, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions? No? Ms. Adams, thank you. That was extremely thorough and informative, and I think that's why we have no questions. Next item.
Civil Service Commission, staff comments.
Do we have any staff comments? I think we've commented so much today. Next item, please, Mr. Kwan.
Public Employee Discipline Hearing, Senior Integrated Waste Truck Operator.
Madam Chair, if I may, at this time, we will be turning off the cameras. After this item, we do have another closed session item. That item, I believe, will be reported out, but not on camera. And then after that, there are no other agenda items. We will adjourn. So at this time, if you'd like to take a 1 moment or 2 minute break, maybe stretch your legs, but we'll take the time to turn off the cameras and then go into the next item.
Okay, why don't we do that? Why don't we take a restroom break?